Alright, so a big thanks goes out to Sam Takara for sending me this article on Facebook. This is a really interesting article, and I wanted to raise this up to you guys, see what you guys thought. Let me go ahead and read you a lot of this right quick, and then we'll have our discussion. So, the Red Cross has called upon game studios to take into account the real-world repercussions of war crimes in games. Many action games feature systems or scenarios that enable the player to participate in war crimes, if not with explicit rewards, then often with an implicit lack of penalty, such as shooting civilians in Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, torturing interrogation subjects Splinter Cell Blacklist, or stealing dog tags of enemy combatants Metal Gear Solid 2. Real-world violations of these laws will carry heavy penalties, including imprisonment or, in certain cases, execution. So while the Red Cross is explicitly not arguing that every depiction of warfare in even the most cartoonish of games needs to provide repercussions for these acts, it does raise the interesting point. Do games which build themselves on their visual and thematic realism need to provide a realistic consequence for those actions as well? So I know that was kind of a lot to digest, so let's break it down here. So what it's saying is that game developers, game studios are going for this hyper realistic, combat type scenario, where it's kind of hard to blur the lines between what happens on a real world battlefield, versus a video game kind of battlefield. And I'm not talking about Battlefield the game, I'm just saying a battlefield type scenario, right? Guns and war and all that stuff. And they'll build in these storylines to the games where your hero, the guy that you're playing with, is committing war crimes. And in the game, instead of being held to the same standard that somebody would be held to in the real world for, committing those same war crimes, the hero that we're playing with, whoever that character is often just considered a hero, and like nothing's that big of a deal, right? So what they're saying is that if gaming studios are going to push for this hyper realistic world via graphics and all these other things, should they also be pushing for your character who commits these acts to also be penalized in the game as if it were a real life situation? So I can kind of see both sides of the fence on this one. Part of me says, oh, it's just a game, don't worry about it, whatever, it's all fantasy, it's not real. But when you're looking at a game that's like combat related, like a Battlefield or a Call of Duty, or like they said, Splinter Cell, these games, even though they're not real, they have realistic qualities to them that sometimes blurs that line. And what I mean by that is, you're not dealing, it's not like playing Kingdom Hearts or Final Fantasy or an RPG. It's not something that can't be duplicated in the real world. Like, we know that, things like magic and stuff like that don't really exist. You see what I mean? So when you're playing a game like Final Fantasy or something like that, it's super easy to say that there's no consequences for me doing anything in this game because you can't relate to it in reality. But with games like Call of Duty and some of these other games, it is so steeped in reality. Even though it's a game, it's real. I mean, sometimes you're playing in like real parts of the world. You're playing against the Russians or something like that, somebody that's in real life, an entity that exists in real life. You're dealing with threats like nuclear bombs and warheads and stuff like that. So even though you're playing that game in a quote unquote fantasy type environment or world, it's not really so far-fetched from reality, because that's what you face in the real world. I mean, those are real world type scenarios. So part of me says it's just a game, who cares? But the other part of me is like, wouldn't it be cool if somebody did, create a game where, based on your actions in the game would determine if you actually became the true hero of the game, or if you did something that blurred the lines and maybe like even a war crime where the ending would be your execution, where you could actually choose that part of your destiny. That would be an interesting take on a game. I was reading the comments below with the article, and some people were saying that they feel like, and actually some of them were saying they feel really strongly about this, like they want to see it in game, which was really weird to me, because I was thinking that maybe in the comments they were going to be ripping this article like, come on, it's just a game. But a lot of them were saying, yeah, we want to see that. And a lot of them, I think, were military veterans and stuff like that who want to see that kind of consequence in a game. And there was one guy who was saying in the comments, he was like, well, in his opinion, he doesn't think that a game should ever put you in a position to commit a war crime to begin with. that should never be a scenario. But if they do put you in that position, there should be a real world consequence in the game, right? You know, a penalty for it. So I don't know, like I'm 50-50 on this one. I like to hear what you guys think about it. Let's get that discussion started in the comments below. Do you think that while you're playing your character in the game, if you do something that's considered a really, like a war crime in real life, do you think that your character in the game should be penalized accordingly? Or do you think it's just a game? Who cares, right? Who cares? You know, it's just fantasy, you know. So let me see which side of the fence you guys are on in the comments below, and I'll see you in tomorrow's show. You guys be good.